Morgan's mom texted her 11-year-old daughter, Tessa. "Don't come for Christmas. It's better if you don't." Tessa looked at the message, then at the gift for Grandma she'd spent 6 hours making. Morgan didn't cry. She just replied, "Understood." 3 hours later, their lives started to collapse. There are moments when the entire world goes quiet. This was one of them. Not the peaceful, meditative quiet in yoga videos filmed by people who have never met anxiety. No. This was the someone just punched a hole through her reality quiet. Tessa stood in the doorway of their living room, holding her phone like it was something radioactive. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her face. Oh, her face. She looked like someone had unwrapped her heart, thrown it on the floor, and stepped on it with wet boots. She walked toward Morgan in slow motion, like a little ghost in socks, and handed her the phone without blinking. The text glared up at Morgan. "Don't come for Christmas. It's better if you don't." Her mother's name was floating above it like a smug little cloud. Morgan blinked, read it again, then a third time, in case she had temporarily developed a rare condition that made sentences rearrange themselves into evil. Nope, still evil. Her brain did a full blue screen reboot. Her heart did a weird, painful hiccup. Her left eye twitched. Tessa watched her with the kind of stillness only that child could manage. That quiet, contained way she had when something hurt too much for her body to process. Her lips pressed together, just the slightest tremble at the edges. She didn't cry. Morgan's kid never cried first. Tessa froze, like someone had hit an emotional pause button. Then Tessa looked at the gift. The gift. The handmade present she'd spent hours on. Hunched over the dining table, tongue between her teeth, focused so intensely she didn't even notice when Morgan put a plate of dinner next to her. The present she made for Grandma. The one she kept checking on, adjusting, perfecting. And beside it, the gifts she made for her cousins, Caleb, Madison, Harper, all lined up like tiny pieces of her hope. Tessa looked at them, then back at Morgan. Nothing about her expression changed, but something inside Morgan cracked so loudly she could swear she heard it. I think I need to." Tessa's voice was a whisper, barely air. "I need to be alone for a little." Morgan's throat closed. "Okay, sweetheart." Tessa nodded once, small and mechanical, then walked down the hallway and gently closed the bathroom door behind her. Not a slam, not even a click, just a quiet, devastating little closure. And that was the moment Morgan stopped being sad and started being dangerous. She picked up her phone, felt that tremor of adrenaline settle into something sharp, and walked into the kitchen, the only room in the house where she could pace aggressively without stepping on a Lego. She hit call mom. Her mother answered on the second ring, voice sugary in that way that made Morgan's molars itch. "Hi, sweetheart. What is that message supposed to mean?" Morgan cut in. There was a pause, a little theatrical sigh. "Oh, Morgan, let's not make this dramatic." Morgan's hand clenched around the counter. "You told Tessa not to come." "We all discussed it," Mom said, like we meant some grand decision-making council instead of the dysfunctional circus that was their family. Andrea and Lucas agreed. The children agreed. It's just better this way. "Better how?" Morgan asked. "You know how she is, dear." And there it was, that tone. Her mother had already judged Tessa, so anything Morgan said was automatically wrong. "She just doesn't fit in with the other kids. There will be games, noise, chaos. It's not the right environment." "She is your granddaughter," Morgan said. A beat. "Yes, well," Mom said lightly. "Not all children connect with big family gatherings. And the others said they wouldn't be comfortable. I'm just protecting them." "Protecting them," Morgan repeated, deadpan. "From an 11-year-old who spent weeks making them gifts?" Oh, Morgan, don't twist my words. We all agreed. It's settled. If you want to come alone, you're welcome. Just don't bring Tessa. Morgan's jaw locked so hard she thought she might crack a tooth. And that's final, Mom added, with the grace of a door slamming in Morgan's soul. Morgan didn't scream. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She just said, evenly, "Understood," and hung up. Morgan leaned against the wall, breathing like someone had unplugged all her emotions and left her on survival mode. Then she felt a presence behind her. Tessa. The girl stood in the middle of the hallway in her soft pajama pants, eyes red around the edges but still dry. Her voice came small and careful. "What did she say? Can I come?" Morgan crouched down and pulled her into a hug. Slow, gentle, so she didn't break her. "No," Morgan said softly. "Even if you could, we're not going." Tessa nodded into her shoulder. "Okay." Her voice was steady, but Morgan could feel the tightness in her daughter's body, the kind of quiet hurt that sits under the skin like a bruise. "We're going to do something better," Morgan said, brushing a strand of hair from Tessa's face. Tessa looked up at her with those wide, hopeful eyes that always undid her. "Like what?" Morgan smiled. And it wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile that makes villains reconsider their life choices. "You'll see." Because right then, in the stillness of that awful, perfect moment, something clicked into place inside Morgan. A decision, a clarity, a cold, steady resolve. And while Tessa padded back to her room and curled up under her blanket, Morgan picked up her phone again. 3 hours later, their lives would start to fall apart. But right now, she just stood there, staring at the doorway where her daughter had disappeared, and finally understood. This time, she wasn't going to let them hurt Tessa without consequences. Not anymore. If you'd asked Morgan years ago why she always felt like a stray cat standing outside her own family's window, watching everyone else eat warm casserole while she gnawed on emotional gravel, she wouldn't have had an answer. Now? Oh, she had answers. She had answers. Documentation, emotional scars, and a rage that could power the eastern seaboard. But let's rewind. Because none of this started with a Christmas text. This started decades ago, long before Tessa ever picked up a glue stick or whispered, "Do you think Grandma will like it?" This started with the childhood cosmic joke otherwise known as being the middle child in her family. And yes, Morgan could practically hear the universe laughing. Andrea, her older sister, had exited the womb ready for Broadway. She was loud, sparkly, and dramatic in a way that made teachers say things like leadership potential, while Morgan translated it as someone please sedate her. Lucas, her younger brother, was the adorable, mischievous golden boy, baby Jesus with a baseball bat. And then there was Morgan, quiet, nerdy, a background character in her own household. Her mother adored children with volume knobs permanently stuck on attention. Her father adored peace and books and fixing things that technically weren't broken, which meant he adored Morgan. Dad and Morgan were the only two soft-spoken people in a house that sounded like a marching band trapped inside a blender. Some nights, when Mom was out being the social meteor she always was, streaking across town in a trail of cocktails and half-finished gossip, Dad and Morgan would make grilled cheese and sit in silence. A comfortable silence. A finally nobody is yelling silence. He'd glance at her from across the table and say things like, "You know, Morgan, there's nothing wrong with being quiet. The world needs quiet people." That man was her anchor, which is why the day he got sick, the ground under her cracked. His illness crept in slowly. Little hints, little pauses, little winces he thought she couldn't see. And then suddenly, it wasn't little. Hospitals, medications, that faint smell of antiseptic that burrowed permanently into her memory. Morgan spent more time by his bedside than anywhere else. Mom visited, of course, but always like a guest star on a show she didn't really watch. Meanwhile, Andrea breezed in to talk about her latest social drama. Lucas came for the vending machine snacks. Morgan stayed, because he needed someone who wouldn't fill the room with noise. They talked, sometimes. Mostly they just existed in that quiet way they had always understood. And then, one night, when he looked more tired than she had ever seen him, he asked her to sit closer. "Morgan," he whispered, "I need to tell you something. Before I go." She felt something cold slip between her ribs. "Dad, don't—" "No, sweetheart. Listen." What he told her next felt like someone had switched her life into a different genre without warning. He suspected her mother had cheated. A lot. Enough that he had done a secret DNA test. And Morgan, awkward, quiet, unfavorite Morgan, was his only biological child. She remembered staring at him, blinking like the news was buffering in her brain. He apologized for waiting so long to tell her. He said he didn't want to blow up the family while he was still alive. He said he loved Andrea and Lucas even if they weren't his, and he didn't want to be the reason they felt unwanted. Then he took her hand and said the words that shook her more than anything. "I left everything to you. The house, the one we lived in, and the apartment we rented out. All of it. It's yours." Morgan nodded. "Because that's what you do when your father is holding on by a thread and giving you truths that could set the planet on fire." She didn't cry until much later. When he died, she was 17, a minor, barely holding herself together. And that was when she asked Mom, gently, cautiously, already bracing, whether there had been a will. Her mother didn't blink, didn't hesitate, didn't stutter. "No, there wasn't anything," Mom said, casually flipping through a magazine like they were discussing weather patterns. "Everything naturally passes to the spouse. That's how it works." Morgan remembered feeling an odd, nauseous swirl in her stomach, like she'd just heard a familiar song played slightly off-key. But she didn't have evidence. She had no document, no lawyer, no adult power, just a dying man's whisper and a mother who lied with the grace of someone who'd been doing it for decades. So she let it go. Outwardly. Quiet kids become excellent observers, and even better secret storage vaults. Fast forward a decade. Morgan grew up. She married Noah, who was an actual saint disguised as an army doctor. They built a calm, stable life, a life where she didn't have to compete for oxygen. Then Tessa arrived, her gentle, brilliant, soft-voiced girl who looked at the world like it was a puzzle worth solving. Tessa's diagnosis at 5 didn't surprise Morgan. It explained her daughter's quiet intensity, her hyper-focus, her difficulty with loud environments, her way of practicing conversations in the mirror like she was studying for an exam. Tessa wasn't wrong. She wasn't broken. She was just Tessa. And she adored Morgan's family. Painfully enough, she adored them. The cousins, Caleb, Madison, Harper, all loud and bright like their parents. The exact kind of kids who steamroll quieter ones without even noticing. Tessa tried to keep up anyway. Rehearsed jokes, memorized games, studied their preferences like she was preparing to be interviewed by royalty. And Mom? Grandma? Tessa looked at her like she hung the moon. "Do you know what it's like?" Morgan often thought, "watching your child try so desperately to fit into a family that once stuffed you into the margins like a footnote? It's agony, like watching your younger self walk into the same buzzsaw. And so every holiday, every birthday, every forced cheer dinner." Morgan went. She smiled. She pretended not to see the favoritism. She swallowed the echoes of her own childhood. For Tessa. Only for Tessa. And then, about a year before Christmas, something in Morgan snapped awake. She didn't even remember what triggered it. A weird comment from Mom. A look between Andrea and Mom. A passing remark about family property. But suddenly the old suspicion unfurled inside her like a venomous plant. So she did something she should have done years ago. She investigated. Quietly. Privately. Without telling anyone. Public records are patient, unemotional things. They don't lie. They don't play favorites. And what Morgan found made her hands shake. The will existed. It was valid. Everything, the house her mother lived in, and the apartment she had gifted to Andrea, was legally Morgan's. Morgan's. Her father had done it exactly as he promised. Her mother had hidden it exactly as Morgan had feared. And Morgan? She didn't sue. Because Tessa loved them. Because Tessa wanted so badly to belong. Because Tessa would have been devastated. So Morgan swallowed it, just like she swallowed everything else. Until last night. Because when Mom texted Tessa that she wasn't welcome at Christmas, that was the fuse. And what Morgan did next? Well, let's just say silence was no longer in her nature. And the explosion was coming. If you've ever wondered what it feels like to be so furious your eyelids vibrate, Morgan could confirm it's exactly as glamorous as it sounds. That was her the moment she shut the bathroom door behind Tessa and heard the soft click. That tiny, polite little sound that meant Tessa was hurting too much to let anyone see her face right now. Her kid. Her soft-spoken, gift-making, people-pleasing kid. And the people Tessa adored most had just told her she wasn't wanted. Every cell in Morgan's body went incandescent. She walked into the kitchen like she was entering a combat zone, yanked her phone out of her pocket, and scrolled straight to Serena, her closest friend on the planet, the only lawyer she trusted, and the woman who once threatened to sue an airline on Morgan's behalf because they lost her luggage and her will to live. Serena's contact photo popped up, her holding a mug that said, "Trust me, I'm a lawyer," which suddenly felt more like a battle cry than a joke. Morgan hit call. Serena picked up on the first ring. "Morgan?" Serena said. "Talk to me. My mother told Tessa not to come to Christmas." A beat of silence. Then, "Absolutely not. Where are you? I'm coming." 20 minutes later, Serena barreled through the front door. Hair in a messy bun, coat half-zipped, legal bag slung over her shoulder like she was about to drop-kick the judicial system. She didn't bother with hello. "Show me." Morgan handed her the phone. Serena read the text once. Her jaw flexed. Not in confusion, but recognition. Because she already knew everything else. The will, the stolen inheritance, the whole year Morgan had spent sitting on a bomb. "Okay," Serena said, eyes narrowing. "What do you think about ending her entire holiday?" "Is that legal?" Morgan asked. "For you?" Serena was already pulling out her laptop. "Always." She took over Morgan's dining table like she was staging a coup. "It's Christmas Eve," Morgan said. "Perfect," Serena replied. "People remember consequences better during the holidays." "I meant, shouldn't we wait?" Serena looked up sharply. "Morgan, she blindsided your kid. You've waited 11 years longer than I would have. Sit down." Morgan sat. Serena typed with terrifying focus, keys rattling like she was writing a spell. "Your mother's party starts at 6, right?" Serena asked. "Yes." "Great. We'll serve her during dessert." Morgan's eyebrows tried to leave the country. 30 minutes later, Serena spun the laptop towards her. "Review this," she said. "Everything accurate?" Morgan read the header. The name of the plaintiff, Morgan. The defendants, Mom, Andrea, Mom's husband, Paul. Seeing it in print made something inside her go deadly calm. "Yes," Morgan said. "Everything is accurate." "Good," Serena said. "Then let's serve them." "We?" Morgan asked. Serena grinned the grin of a woman who passed the bar exam and now used that power exclusively for righteous chaos. "Oh, I'm delivering it myself." Morgan blinked. "You're... what?" "Morgan," Serena said. packing the documents into a perfectly innocent-looking holiday gift bag. "This woman stole your inheritance and psychologically kneecapped your kid. I am not missing the opportunity to hand her the consequences in person." Morgan had no arguments, just awe. Meanwhile, Tessa was curled under her blanket in her room, hugging her stuffed fox, taking the deep, shuddering breaths she took when the world overwhelmed her. Morgan's heart cracked for the 1,000th time. She whispered through the doorway, "I'm right here, sweetheart." Tessa didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Morgan knew she heard her. Serena straightened, smoothed her coat, and picked up the gift bag. "You ready?" she asked. "No," Morgan said. "But go." Serena nodded and marched out into the cold like a revenge-driven Christmas angel. And then Morgan waited. The house felt too quiet. Not peaceful, just tight, expectant, like every wall was holding its breath. At 6:17 p.m., Morgan's phone rang. It was Mom. The kind of call where she didn't even need to answer to know the venom waiting on the other side. But she answered. "Morgan!" Mom shrieked, proving she was alive, conscious, and exactly as dramatic as expected. "What is this?" Speakerphone. Definitely on speakerphone. Morgan could hear the party in chaos behind her. Clattering plates, raised voices, people gasping. "What is what?" Morgan asked, her voice cool enough to frost the windows. "This lawsuit! You sent a woman to my house like some kind of... that witch! With a bag! And she said I've been served!" Ah, Serena was officially a witch now. Morgan would let her know later. She'd be thrilled. "Correct," Morgan said. "How dare you!" Mom screeched. "On Christmas? In front of everyone?" Behind her, Morgan heard Andrea. "She's trying to make us homeless!" And Lucas. "This is insane, Morgan! You've lost it!" Morgan waited until they burned themselves out like malfunctioning fireworks. Then she said quietly, "You stole my inheritance." Silence. Real silence. The kind that drops so fast you can hear your own heartbeat. "You were supposed to give everything to me when I turned 18, Morgan said. "Dad left it all to me. You hid it. You gave the apartment to Andrea. You kept the house. You lied for years. And I let it go for Tessa's sake. For her." Someone inhaled sharply. Someone else whispered, "What is she talking about?" Mom sputtered. Morgan, that's nonsense." "You told my daughter she wasn't welcome," Morgan said. "You broke her heart. You broke any reason I had to protect you." Andrea jumped in. "We were just trying to—" "No!" Morgan's voice cut like glass. "Don't lie. Don't embarrass yourselves. You all decided she didn't belong." Another silence. A colder one. "You should be ashamed," Morgan said. "I'm done pretending we're family. I'm done giving you what was mine. I want it back." They started shouting again. Mom, Andrea, Lucas, all desperation and denial and fear. But none of it mattered. Serena had already filed the paperwork. The wheels were already turning. And for the first time in Morgan's entire life, she felt the power shift. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She simply said, "This isn't up for debate." And she hung up. The phone didn't ring again. Not for a long time. Morgan stood there in the doorway of Tessa's room, listening to her daughter's soft breathing, and felt something she hadn't felt in decades. Resolve, sharp and steady. But even then, with the lawsuit delivered and the phone silent, she knew it wasn't over. Not even close. If you've never had to sit on the edge of your kid's bed and explain why her entire extended family decided she wasn't worth a folding chair at Christmas, let Morgan tell you. It ages you 10 years in 10 seconds. Tessa was curled into a tight ball under her blanket when Morgan walked in. Her hair was sticking to her cheeks, and the stuffed fox she loved so much was mashed against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her together. "Sweetheart," Morgan whispered, sitting beside her. "Can we talk?" Tessa didn't look at her. Not at first. Then she turned her face, eyes swollen, voice thin and cracking. "I tried so hard, Mom." Those 4 words punched Morgan harder than anything her mother had ever said in her life. "I know," Morgan said. "I know you did." "I practiced. Everything," Tessa whispered, like she was confessing to a crime. "I tried to talk like them. I tried to be fun. I even tried to wear the shirt Madison said was normal. And I still wasn't good enough." Her voice broke on the last word. And something inside Morgan went very, very still. Still enough that if her emotions were a lake, you'd see a warning sign that said, "No swimming, rage sharks." "Tessa," Morgan said, keeping her voice calm because the alternative was screaming into the drywall. "Them not wanting you doesn't mean you're not good enough. It means they're not good enough for you." Tessa blinked, processing. "Some people," Morgan continued, "are never going to like anyone who's a little different, or softer, or smarter, or quieter. That's a them problem, not a you problem." "But why don't they want me?" Tessa asked, eyes filling again. "Because they're cruel. Because they're petty. Because they don't deserve you." But Morgan chose her words carefully. "Because they don't understand you," she said. "And people who don't understand something often act mean to it." Tessa looked away, picking at her blanket. "It hurts." "I know," Morgan whispered. "I felt the same way when I was your age." Tessa's head snapped toward her. "You did?" Oh. So this was the moment. The moment where Morgan told her daughter something Tessa deserved to know, even if it would sting at first. "Yeah," Morgan said softly. "They didn't treat me very well either. But Grandma is always saying—" "Grandma lies," Morgan said, gently but firmly. "A lot." She took a breath. "No going back now." "There's something you need to know," Morgan said. "Something I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want you to feel caught in the middle." Tessa's shoulders tightened, worried, bracing. "Your grandfather," Morgan said quietly, "left everything he owned to me before he died. The house, the apartment, everything." Tessa frowned. "But Grandma lives there." "She wasn't supposed to," Morgan said. "She hid the will. She pretended it didn't exist. And she gave the apartment to Aunt Andrea even though she had no right to." Tessa's eyes widened. "She stole it?" "Yes." "And she knew it was supposed to be yours?" "She did." Silence. Then Tessa whispered, "I admired her." Morgan nodded. "I know, baby. I know. She's not a good person, is she?" That was a knife right between Morgan's ribs. "People can pretend to be good," Morgan said. "They can smile and act nice and say the right things. But what they do, that's who they are. And what she did to you, what she did to me, that's not love. That's not family." Tessa absorbed that like it was programming code rearranging her brain. Then her jaw set. Softly, but definitely. "I don't want them in my life," she whispered. A part of Morgan wanted to cheer. A bigger part wanted to cry. Instead, she leaned in. "You won't have to." Tessa hesitated. "But what about the apartment? And the house?" "We're taking them back," Morgan said. Tessa's eyes widened again. "We can?" "Yes," Morgan said. "And when we do, you know that program you've always wanted? The summer intensive for digital art? The one with the mentorship and the travel?" Tessa's breath hitched. The one that costs a lot? The one we couldn't afford, Morgan said. Until now. Tessa stared at her like Morgan had just told her unicorns were real and also taking new applicants. Really? Really. Tessa exhaled, long, shaky, overwhelmed. But there was hope in it too. A tiny spark. The beginning of healing. The next morning, the smear campaign began. Because if there's one thing Morgan's mother couldn't stand more than being held accountable, it was being held accountable publicly. By noon, Mom had called half the extended family and apparently performed a dramatic monologue worthy of a hospital soap opera. According to her, Morgan was making them homeless. She was greedy. She was unstable. She was trying to steal their livelihoods. And she'd ruined Christmas for no reason. By 2 p.m., Morgan's phone was blowing up. Cousins she hadn't heard from since Obama's first term were suddenly texting like they were trauma bonded. Is it true you sued your mom? What's going on? Your mother is saying wild things. Are you okay? So Morgan told them. All of it. Tessa's exclusion. The hidden will. The stolen inheritance. The illegally gifted apartment. Andrea's participation. Paul living in property he had no right to. And the fact that Morgan had stayed silent for Tessa, and for no other reason. The shift was instant. Replies rolled in like dominoes tipping over. I had no idea. That's awful. Your poor daughter. Good for you. She stole from you? Jesus. You're doing the right thing. Mom's smear campaign died so fast, it didn't even get a funeral. 2 days later, Andrea showed up at Morgan's door. She looked like she hadn't slept, and Paul hovered behind her, holding one of the kids' coats like a man preparing for an evacuation. You can't do this, Andrea blurted before Morgan even said hello. Where am I supposed to go? Where are my kids supposed to go? You should have thought about that, Morgan said calmly, before you decided my daughter wasn't worth a seat at Christmas. It wasn't like that. Don't lie, Morgan said. It's embarrassing. Andrea's face crumpled, and for 1 second, Morgan felt a flicker of pity. But then she remembered Tessa sitting alone with a handmade gift she would never deliver, and the pity evaporated. That apartment was always mine, Morgan said, and you living there was never free. It cost my daughter her chance at having a family. Andrea's shoulders sagged. She murmured something like an apology. But it wasn't for Tessa. It was for herself. And Morgan was done with that. Start packing, Morgan said quietly. You have time, but you do have to go. Andrea left trembling. The court battle came weeks later. Mom, Andrea, and Paul tried everything. The will is invalid. Morgan waited too long. We thought the house was ours. She wants to punish us. We're victims. Serena dismantled them like IKEA furniture built without instructions. When the judge ruled in Morgan's favor, confirming she was the rightful heir and ordering them to vacate both properties, the look on their faces was something Morgan would not lie about. She would treasure it forever. Not because she wanted them hurt, but because Tessa finally saw consequences for people who had hurt her for years. That mattered. When they walked out of the courthouse, Tessa took Morgan's hand and squeezed it. This is ours now, Morgan told her. And so is your future. Tessa nodded, her eyes bright with something Morgan hadn't seen in weeks. Hope. You know what? Tessa whispered. I feel okay. And just like that, the world didn't feel so heavy anymore. Because after everything, the lies, the exclusion, the betrayal, they ended exactly where they were meant to be. Free. Together. And building a life where no one would ever again make Tessa feel small. Not now. Not ever. So, what do you think? Too far? Not far enough? Let us know in the comments. And subscribe for more.